It says
Good.
please stand by on my end.
Yeah, so this is what it does when you multi-stream. It starts like a event on YouTube, and then it takes like a minute to actually.
Which is kind of a
So
bummer.
yeah, for us that's gonna change in a bit because I'm actually gonna switch back over to XSplit. I think from OBS, and that has a little bit more. Now it has a few more features in it. So um,
I've got it live on YouTube now.
there we go. Now we are live. Out from the four guys are ready to go. Welcome everyone to the Four Guys with Quarters podcast. This is episode number 115 for December 8th, 2016. I'm your host, Inferno217, and with me are a familiar gaggle of geese. First goose in the lineup, making his 115th straight appearance. DPCI Assassin, what's up, bud?
Hi.
Wow, very excited. Very excited to do the show tonight. Got a few topics I know that he really enjoys, and this is what we get from him. But, you know, at least consistent.
Hey, it could be a fan.
It could be a fan. This is true. But luckily, we convinced him to turn the fan off and boil in that Wisconsin heat for a little bit of time for us tonight. Next up, we've got filling in for Taylor this week, one of our fairly regular guests, I'd say. But we haven't had him on for a while because of school and other conflicts. But we're glad to have him back this week. Bear Claw Gaming, what's up, man?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me back on. I know, like you said, it's been a little while, but really happy to be back on one of my favorite podcasts. It's great.
Yeah, we're glad to have you back, and I know there's a lot for you to talk about. I know you've written some articles on your site, bearclawgaming.com. If you guys haven't checked that out, please do so because it is awesome. No frills, opinionated stuff, and written extremely, extremely well because Bear Claw Gaming is actually probably going to do this for a living in a few short years, right? How many more years do you have of school?
Uh, Depends if I choose grad school, but if not, 1 year
There you
more.
go.
Yeah, so we'll see.
So he'll take it to pro level, from amateur to pro level in just a little bit of time here. So definitely look out at bearclawgaming.com for his articles. And last but not least, we've got Italian Clowns. What's going on, bud?
Yo, what's up?
Nothing much. I mean, we got a lot of topics this week. A little bit of catching up to do. Last week I wasn't here, so I kind of know what happened, but we're sorry that Restream had a few issues staying connected for some reason. I don't know. Maybe we'll ditch Restream. I don't know what we're gonna do, but we'll figure it out, and hopefully this show stays constant throughout the entirety of the episode. But yeah, let's start with the thing that kind of happened the furthest back, I would say, since we've last convened here, and that would be the PlayStation Experience, which happened. What day was that? Was that Saturday or was it Sunday?
Saturday?
Yeah, I think it was last Saturday. PlayStation had this little event. If you guys haven't caught it, you probably have. I know a lot of our viewers and listeners actually watch a bunch of different podcasts and are very in tune with this kind of thing. So you probably have seen it and probably have thoughts. So if you do, definitely throw them in the chat. I don't know what I was pointing to, but something. Throw them in either Twitch, Beam, or YouTube, where I'm watching all of those, and we'll be in there as well. So yeah, maybe whoever wants to go first, I guess, on this about just general thoughts about the conference, and maybe before we get into what it means for Xbox, just kind of like generally, if you liked what you saw, if you didn't like what you saw, that kind of thing.
I can start if no one else has a strong opinion.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So first and foremost, I think this is hands down way better than last year. For a lot of reasons. There's a lot more content. I'll say that they had a lot of remasters, but all things that people want, right? I think the big standouts for me, obviously, Last of Us 2, but even the Crash Bandicoot remaster looked good to me. And there's a fair bunch of indies, and there's stuff for everybody, right? Like even Marvel vs. Capcom 4, which is going to be multi-platform, which a lot of people were worried about. But yeah, no, it looks great.
I believe you mean Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite.
Infinite, right? Yes, not 4.
Thank you.
Even though it is
Thank you.
4. But
Yeah. All right. Um, yeah. Before I give my thoughts, I want to get everybody's thoughts. I don't want to just chime in here, but Basson, what did you think of the show, bud?
Well, Last of Us 2 and the Uncharted DLC caught my eye. Everything else in between, I could just go out without. You know,
Hmm.
nothing caught my eye. I thought, meh.
Okay, all right. Did you catch the entire show? Did you watch it live? Did you watch it afterwards? How did you?
I caught it live, and I was almost falling asleep just because like 90% of those games just didn't interest me.
Yeah, the middle section was fairly weak, I would say. I think they came out kind of strong at the beginning and strong at the end, but the middle section, a lot of stuff they didn't even give names to. They just showed footage, and it was just like, oh, well, what's that called? And when's that coming out? Guess no one
You know,
cares. Here's Last of Us 2. Bam! Everyone just like declares it the next coming of Jesus Christ. But um, Clowns, what did you think of it, bud?
I gotta say, PSX did what gamers wanted in general, I think, but it also showed what's wrong with the industry. And I'm not saying this from a fanboy point of view at all because I have, I have a PS4 and I got a ton of PS4 games that I just haven't opened yet. They're sitting on the shelf. But here's what they did wrong. I'll say it first: is that they didn't show any specific release dates. I mean, these are major titles coming out. People, have been wanting them, requesting them, but there's no date on when to expect it. Is this going to be like PlayStation 5, PlayStation 6? By the time it comes out, we don't know. The remasters, I think, were clutch for PlayStation
Big time.
because it hits that nostalgia and people want it. Even though I'm not a fan of like Parappa the Rapper or however you say it, I
Hmm?
mean,
it
there's
looked
like
terrible.
there's a huge fan base out for that.
Yeah.
So
Me
it's
included.
it's gonna help. It's gonna help the console. It's gonna help PS4 in general, Sony. So I mean, yeah, I think PSX was strong for the gamers. It just shows that game companies don't give us release dates anymore.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's because my thought, and I think the general consensus about that is probably because people would be upset if they saw 2018, 2019 instead of 2017. 2017 is just weeks away, whereas 2018 to a gamer feels like an eternity, and 2019, which is probably more likely the release date for Last of Us, I would say, is more than an eternity to gamers. People don't want, they're hyped, but they don't want to wait that long. They don't want to concrete that they'll wait that long. People get the satisfaction, they get that itch, they get that suspense drug that is finding out when it actually is coming out. Look what happened with Red Dead. Like Red Dead, that trailer came out, fell flat because people kind of know when it's coming out and they didn't see enough, and then that's a different discussion. But this was a little bit of a teaser, and I feel like if they said 2019 for Last of Us 2, then, or whatever, what's the tagline? I don't even know the tagline. I'm just calling it The Last of Us 2 for Christ's sake.
Part 2.
Part 2, thank you. I feel like people would be upset. I don't know what you guys think about that.
Well, and I think there are some good and bad things that we didn't address too, like about PSX. Whereas, like, I think they did a very good job. They had several things where, like, and it's available now. And I always love that at shows, whether it's a free thing or just a surprise, little game. I always think that's really cool. But like there were just some things that don't make any sense. Like they pay for exclusivity for like 2 weeks early access to Resident Evil 7 demo, and like that doesn't like again like that's not bringing in new customers. You know what I mean? Nobody's gonna buy a console for 2 weeks early access to a Resident Evil 7 demo. So why do it? You know what I mean?
Right. But
Yeah.
potentially you may see something that's not widely talked about exclusivity thing is, and I kind of agree with people about it because I don't think it's a good play, is the exclusivity thing with Marvel vs. Capcom, the Ultimate
Yes,
Edition. Okay.
yes, I complained about that nonstop that day.
People, I feel like I'm watching, some podcasts. I'm hearing some people talk about it during their live streams, playing games and stuff, and they're talking about PSX, and no one mentions that. But that was such a big deal. That's a 4-month exclusivity deal, and like you just said, Bear Claw, a 2-week one. Like, who cares, right? 2 weeks, big deal on a demo. Wow, good for you. But a 4-month exclusivity on one of the most iconic franchises, fighting franchises in the history of games, honestly. for some people it's right there with the Street Fighters and the Mortal Kombat's of the world, and no one's even talking about it. No one even cares. So
Well,
Right.
I wanted to say on the Capcom thing, it's it's really terrible on Capcom's behalf because they're not really doing extravagant with their Street Fighter V. I mean, that thing flopped. It was terrible, and here they come with this awesome thing. It's like, hey fans, we're making this for you guys. Oh, sorry, Xbox, you gotta wait till like March. Sorry, guys. I mean, that hurts the community in general. Why can't you just release it on both platforms at the same time? What's the big deal?
right.
Well, and to my memory, and it could have changed now with Street Fighter V. In fact, I'm sure it did. But I remember when they re-released Street Fighter 4 on PS4. It was actually such a bad port that the pros went back to the Xbox 360 version because it was so well optimized and the controls were so responsive on the console. And so, I mean, and we had the same thing with when Call of Duty went from Xbox to PlayStation as well, where like there are some pros who are just not going to follow a game when it swaps platforms. And maybe that's what happened with Street Fighter 5. I know the game is successful in the pro circuit now, but it flopped terribly at launch.
I mean, for the mass market, the game was a flop. It still is a flop. I mean, competition-wise, you might be right. It might have picked up, in the circuits for competition. But another thing, too, with Capcom, and I don't understand this, right? So, Marvel vs. Capcom, that one that they're putting back out, right?
Yeah.
It's still got the cartoonish look that everybody loved in the arcades. Like, it had the arcade fighting feel. And they come along with Infinite, and it looks like texture, model, and characters. I don't want to play that crap. I want to go back to that arcadey feel.
Yeah.
I mean, like, Street Fighter V had that character texture thing, and it was terrible.
Yeah, I mean, if people that are listening to this remember it, fondly the Marvel vs. Capcom games up until now, it's been that art style. It's been very, very arcadey in nature. And now it seems like with the Infinite version, a lot of people are digging it. And those people that are digging it are probably mostly fans of like the Injustices or like Mortal Kombat X, because that's the kind of tone I got from it. So there is potential. I'm with you on that, Clowns. There's potential for them to lose a little bit of share there because it's not what they remembered. It's not the same thing. It's like the similar risk that Street Fighter 4 took, honestly. I mean, worked out because of the esports, but...
Well, like, that's just Capcom in general these days, is willing to take risks, which, again, like, you and I have had this conversation before where it's like, we don't know how long Capcom's going to be around because the risks don't often pay off, but, like, even Resident Evil 7, right, which is the tonally pretty different from the past few, first-person perspective, and it's just, Capcom is willing to do these things, and it's very risky to alienate your base, right, like... But Capcom's been doing that lately. I don't know. But yeah, and I totally don't understand why they shift from the iconic look that Marvel... Like, what made Marvel vs. Capcom different, besides obviously including Marvel characters, is like aesthetically it was unique. And now it's just homogenous fighter,
Right.
for better or worse.
Yep, definitely. Let me go back into the chat for a second because Xbot is in the YouTube chat, and he said something that I think we should kind of bring into this convo about the exclusivity stuff that they showed off. The Sony is doing it because it's cheap. Let's be honest. You think a franchise like Marvel vs. Capcom is cheap, or do you think just Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 is cheap because they're just desperate to get some more sales on something that was out 5 years ago?
I think it's hard to say. I haven't seen any footage of the PS4 re-release.
It looks the exact same.
Nothing is updated?
It doesn't look different at all to me. I didn't download it on my PlayStation, but I watched a few streams of it, and nothing seems different to me. It seems very similar.
Yeah, I mean, if there's no big tech upgrades, then it was cheap as hell.
Yeah.
Yeah, I probably agree. I can't imagine these things are cheap for Sony. But maybe Capcom, because they are where they are with money, maybe it's right way to go.
So Xbox clarifies in the chat. I thought he was talking about Marvel vs. Capcom, which if nothing has changed, I'm with you on Bear Claw. That definitely was cheap. But I guess Xbox was talking about the remasters that we were just talking about with Crash Bandicoot and Parappa the Rapper. That stuff he thinks is pretty cheap. See, the Crash Bandicoot stuff is supposedly... I mean, we haven't seen a ton of the footage, but supposedly is built from the ground up. Whereas the Parappa the Rapper is very strictly just a 4K up-res. I mean, I played the demo for that. I don't know if you checked that out, Bear Claw or Clowns, on your PS4 yet, or...
I haven't, But well, and the thing with Crash 2 is, unless things have changed from last year, I kind of want to say it was Adam Boyes, or maybe I forget the other guy's name, but one of them said that it was done through a partnership with Activision, which means Activision is doing the remaster for them.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. But if that's the case, then Crash Bandicoot is an expensive remaster. But as far as like Parappa the Rappa, yeah, I'm sure that's not very expensive. And I've heard it has input lag in the demo, which isn't great to hear.
Yeah, I noticed that as well, and I'm not sure if I can blame that necessarily on the game or because of my television or what it was, because, you know, there seems to be a correlation between some of these 4K games and a little bit of input lag, especially if it's an HDR. But it looks like the Insane Trilogy is published by Activision, so you're right about the Crash Bandicoot thing. The developer is Vicarious Visions, who, quite honestly, I've never even heard of.
The rumor today was that Bungie is hiring them. I mean, they're owned by Activision. They're helping with the Destiny 2 game. That's the latest report. So apparently we're going to hear their name more often.
Make Destiny great again.
We'll see.
Make Destiny great again. All right, Donald Trump.
Yeah, I just lost my thought, but I was going to say something.
Okay.
All right. Well.
Oh, that's it. I didn't watch like every second of PSX Assassins, so correct me if I'm wrong. But did they show major titles for PS4 such as Persona 5 and Yakuza 6?
They showed a lot. They showed 2 Yakuza, which are just Western ports, right?
Yeah.
And then they showed Last Guardian 2 days before it launched, and then Last of Us and Uncharted. And those were the only AAAs I saw.
But they didn't. So they didn't show Yakuza 6 and Persona 5, which are supposed to be like blockbusters for PS4.
Yeah, I think the Yakuza 6 thing definitely got a point. I think the Persona 5 thing wasn't shown off because that's kind of got a sour taste in everyone's mouth since that was delayed for. If you recall, I don't know if we talked about that in the show. We might have, but that was delayed recently because of the English dubbing, the language dubbing. So I think they may have kept that out just because of that. But I mean, that is a big title, so it was definitely a show for the future. The show for, you know, the hype train, like PlayStation does, right? They like to hype you up. It's not, you know, even E3 didn't really show off a lot of stuff that was, you know, coming out very immediately. It was all, you know, coming 2018 or still in development or currently in development or this, that. So, and the hype train's working, guys. It's working. People are noticing and people are loving it. Even the remaster stuff. I mean, it's working. So, I mean, I know us personally, I think everyone on this panel would rather have some info about games we're going to be playing next year. But there are a lot of people out there that are just saying, you know, oh my God, Last of Us 2, that is actually coming. The fact that it's actually coming is more news than when it's coming. You know what I mean? The fact that we're actually going to get another one. So
right. Yeah, I think that's a major problem. And again, I'll just reiterate it. That's the problem that PSX showed us is that there's no dates.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. I actually, besides, I think Nier Automata, a Square Enix game, had a date. But like they even showed, and we were kind of talking about this, I don't remember if it was before we went live, but they showed a bunch of indie games, but no names or dates with any of them. So it's like, here's what's coming, but good luck figuring out which games were which.
Exactly.
But yeah, no, it was, I mean, and that's kind of been Sony staying, at least since this year's E3, is just, there's not a whole lot of dates with content anymore.
Right.
Which is a drag because I like to know what I'm looking forward to, but.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, it's true, and I think that I'm actually shocked that the hype thing is working as well as it is. You know, I'm primarily an Xbox guy. I'm not going to hide that. But I do play my PlayStation. I enjoy it. But you know, as a person that plays both, even me, I want to know what's coming now. I don't want to wait, and I don't know how these people on PlayStation that haven't gotten any good AAA so far, really, save for Uncharted. You know, I don't know how these people are still able to wait. You know, this thing came out in 2013. It's now 2016, almost 2017, and they're willing to wait another 3 years and be perfectly content. It's crazy. It's crazy to me. Granted, those things coming out in 2019 are probably going to be iconic in the history of games, but
right. Well, and that's the thing, right? Like, I don't know. I've definitely said this to you guys before, maybe not on a show, but like, I always consider my PlayStation. I love it, but I always consider it to be my Naughty Dog machine. In that, like, every time there's a new game or there's an update to an existing game, I'll go back and replay it. But like, besides Until Dawn, Last of Us Remastered, and Uncharted 4 and the Uncharted Collection, I don't think I've played a single game to all the way through on my PS4.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not because I don't enjoy the console. The newest updates especially have made it really user-friendly, but it's just there aren't the same exclusives. I can't get down with JRPGs, and that's personal preference, right? Everyone's got different taste.
Right. Real quick, when I get something J Street said in the YouTube chat, he says, I think people realize games are coming no time soon, but it's nice to know what is coming. I mean, as Xbox people, he didn't say that, but I'm putting that in. We're waiting for Scalebound forever, it seems like, and I'm still hyped for it. But I would argue, J Street, that people are losing hype for that game because of how much is delayed. I think if it were done maybe, earlier this year, it would have done better than it's going to do because, the more people see, I hear all the time, the more people see, the less they're into it on Scalebound. So I don't know. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. I think Scalebound's going to be bit in the ass by it, but I don't know. What do you guys think about the Scalebound thing?
I think Scalebound, and I'm in the middle of writing a comment on this, but I'm slowly writing it into the YouTube chat. But I think Scalebound and Crackdown will be the games of Xbox that they're not going to go on as long as The Last Guardian, for example. But those are the games that like have the most mystery and hype behind them at this point. Mm-hmm. And like they can come out and flop, or they could be great, right? Like Scalebound, I think last I heard was targeting Scorpio's launch. Maybe it needed the extra power. I don't know. Yeah. I've heard the same about Crackdown. But like, yeah, exactly. When you don't show footage besides once a year, I don't know. Even like small developer blogs that come out, once a month or something will keep people interested, or a trailer, like a random trailer. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But I haven't seen anything since E3, and even that was brief.
All right. Anything else about PSX before we move on? I think that's pretty much covering it all. I mean, me personally, about the remasters thing, just to get in my thought about that, I think it's a little much on the remasters. I think a lot of those didn't really need it. The Wipeout thing, I think, is going to be a disaster, quite honestly. I don't think people are going to navigate back to Wipeout. It's not going to... The mechanics are not as good. I mean, we've evolved as gamers and as humans. We don't want that kind of gameplay anymore. I don't think it'll do well. Just like I don't think F-Zero would do well on a new Nintendo console. It's just evolved. We've evolved as racers and as gamers. So I don't think that's going to do well. The Crash is going to sell like hotcakes. People are really nostalgic for that. I'm definitely getting it, even though, as Xbox mentions, and I do agree, it's very much the same. But I mean, I'm really into that. So I'm specifically that title and that franchise. Parappa thing, probably not going to get that unless it's really cheap. It's going to be $10 or less, I'm sure. It does look really good in 4K though. God damn, it's really, really sharp. But anyway, anything else about PSX before we move on?
Nope.
No. Right.
I'd like to see. Sorry, real quick. I'd like to see. Nintendo does little things like Treehouse and all that, but I would like to see Xbox jump into the mini little conferences throughout the year.
Yeah, I think they all should. I think they all should.
Yeah, I mean, Xbox has kind of jumped on like the E3 is for fans bandwagon, and that's just fine. That's great, but I'd love to see something at the halfway point through the year. Just to keep me and everyone else updated with what's going on at first and third party developers.
Right, of course. I think that's how they're gonna win against the hype train thing. I think the hype train thing wins for the set of audience that PlayStation has, and I think I said this on TXL last week. This week. I think that PlayStation has their established audience, so I think they know that works for them. Whereas Microsoft is playing from behind. They're trying to capture any audience they can get, the newer audience even, that they don't already have, obviously, with the variety of sales they got on Black Friday and trying to capture more people to catch up. So they don't know what works, So they're not going to just copy PlayStation because then your diehard people are going to be pissed. So they got to, kind of do it, a little bit in the middle. So, all right. So anybody... I didn't really want to talk about the VGAs because it's been a very long time, but I do want to quickly just ask what you guys thought about that Jeff Keighley, Hideo Kojima kind of like love fest going on. I mean, what the hell was that?
I think that they are good friends, and everybody likes to make it into like a console thing. I don't think it's that. I think it's just genuinely that. And you have to remember, although he doesn't look it, Hideo is like 53 years old, and Jeff is probably 10 or 15 years younger. And so, like, imagine Jeff probably grew up playing his games, and now he's on a scale in his career where he can interact with that person. And I think it's just if any of us got to meet our heroes that made our childhood games or games we played, in college or whatever. I don't know. Everyone likes to say, "Oh, it's PlayStation kissing ass" or whatever, and I didn't get that vibe, despite the game being an exclusive.
No, I didn't get that vibe either. I got the vibe of Hideo Kojima is the god of video games, and we must bow down to him.
Yeah,
Well,
and it was weird. I think Hideo undeniably has been influential, but he's like icon of the year, and it was like, well, there are a lot of really great devs this year.
Right.
But yeah, it was.
So, and obviously from last year's VGAs, you could tell that he felt really bad about what happened with, Konami and, how Kojima was definitely kept out of it. Reports coming out that he couldn't even come near the Metal Gear Solid team for 6 months. The last 6 months of development, they were trying to keep him away so much, and it was an injustice. But I mean, that love fest was way too long. I mean, I was getting a little bit uncomfortable. I'm not gonna lie. It was a little much for me. A little much. Assassin or Clowns on this thing. Did you guys see this and what did you think about it?
It was weird, but good thing they had those musical guests to make us forget.
Oh my God! Quit crying about Run the Jewels, man.
Yeah, the music.
Yeah.
Ugh. I'm the only one apparently.
Yeah,
I'm not a fan of Hideo, whatever his name is. I can't even say it. Say it for me, Inferno.
Hideo Kojima.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of Kojima. I'll just put it that way. I was never intrigued by the Metal Gear series and all that shenanigans. And also with the last one that he made, there was so many bugs with it on launch. So how is he so great?
That's kind of the thing. Metal Gear Solid 5, I think by a lot of people is viewed as one of the best games of all time, and a lot of people it's viewed as a hunk of shit. But people kind of give it that Metal Gear Solid okay, it's one in a series that is quite remarkable, so we're kind of going to give some of these smaller things a pass. And I think that's why Kojima has just done so much that's good on past generations, and maybe that Metal Gear Solid 5 was a little bit weaker in terms of mechanics and bugs. People give that a pass just because it is Metal Gear at its core. I didn't play it really too much, to be honest with you. I'm not a huge fan of the Metal Gear series myself, but it's undoubtedly still Metal Gear if you play it. So, all right. Anything else on this? Probably not. That was way too long on that. I just wanted to kind of throw that in and give a quick laugh, but we talked a little bit longer than I anticipated on that one. Let's I was gonna go into Final Fantasy next, but let's get Assassin talking because I see him chomping at the bit about this Star Wars stuff all day, and I know he's been waiting till 7 p.m. Eastern to just give this a go about the Rogue One Scarif DLC for Battlefront, which I know a lot of people are like, oh, Battlefront, here we go. But Battlefront is coming to the vault next week. If you're an EA Access member, Battlefront was on deep discount at Black Friday, sold pretty well from what I had seen personally and what I've heard. There's undoubtedly a lot of people playing it still. I mean, you can get into full matches, no problem. So the final DLC is now out for the game before next year's Battlefront 2 release. And we get kind of a mixed bag right here, Assassin. What do you want to say about it?
Well, as a true Star Wars fan, Clowns will probably disagree. He'll say he's the best. It's disappointing. I'm worried about Battlefront 2. This DLC is god awful. Even as Bear Claw, the maps are terrible. They look nice, but are terrible gameplay wise. Everyone sits in bushes. I think I've even recorded a clip maybe walking past a bush, and 4 people just come out of it. It's like, what the fuck, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
The game mode is so boring. It's literally TDM 3 times. Well, as people play it, it's TDM. No one plays the objective. The new weapons are god awful. The new star card is awful. Um, what else am I forgetting here?
What about the heroes? You haven't talked really much about the heroes.
Oh, the heroes aren't bad. Like, I think that's the best thing about this DLC. I haven't played as Director Krennic really too much. I've got like 2 kills with him and whatever, but it's hard to find those hero coins. They blend in.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and then Jyn Erso, she's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
I think the best way to describe this DLC, and probably the Death Star DLC as well, is kind of uninspired. And we've had this conversation a little bit, but we're not totally sure who at DICE, what division is behind the DLC at this point, because we do know that DICE is now several teams. The LA team is working on some stuff, presumably a full-fledged Battlefield title for the future. But they also have done DLC stuff for Battlefield 4, so are they doing this? While main DICE focuses on Battlefield 1 and Battlefront 2 as a sequel. But it felt like the first 2 DLCs, one that came out, I think, in the spring and one that in the early summer, correct me if I'm wrong, Assassin, were very good, or at least much better than the base game. And then now we're at this thing where it's like these modes that could be good, but they just came out as half-baked. I don't worry about Battlefront 2. Because I think they're going to put a lot of money and a lot of effort into fleshing that game out much more. I think it's going to be less arcadey than the first Battlefront. DICE has a habit of learning from their mistakes. I'm not worried about it, but I do agree. This whole Rogue One DLC is glorified team deathmatch. Gorgeous maps, but they just catered to like the worst kind of team deathmatch gameplay.
Yeah.
That's
all I've been hearing. I mean, on Twitter, I checked out a couple Twitch streams today, and literally, it's just there's so much cover that's easy to camp in. It's unbelievable.
Well, even the aim assist, it goes through the bushes.
Okay,
like you can't even see someone. It goes through the
bad.
bushes.
Mm-hmm.
So it.
Well, nothing's worse than getting spawn trapped on that beach map, too.
Oh yeah, the maps are so small. Someone could just, like Walker Assault, for instance. The maps are already small, probably like the base game maps. The small maps. The Walker Assault, like you walk 2 steps as the Empire, you're ready at the MCOMs or whatever.
Yeah.
And same thing as the Rebels. It's not fun, and no one watches the MCOMs or whatever, so you can't get Y-wings.
Yeah. I don't know. I just bought the season pass when it was on sale last week. I feel so bad because I think like for me I wanted to play as the heroes. Like seeing that lock symbol on the heroes when we'd all play together, I was just like, damn it, I want Chewbacca. And now Chewbacca got a buff. I don't know if you saw that in the patch notes.
Yep, thank God.
And Lando.
Lando got a buff. Luke Skywalker got a buff. So a few of the heroes got significant buffs. But somebody Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, let's all be honest. When they buff and debuff stuff, the worst thing that they ever did was debuff the hone rockets. That was the worst thing ever. That just ruined the game. It trashed it. And these maps, like Assassin was saying, not only are they small in Walker Assault, I don't even think they look that good. I disagree with you guys on the fact that they look good. I think they look terrible. I mean, it's just every time I look at the maps, it's like beach, bushes, sky. That's it. And it's
you mean they're kind of homogenous looking, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much else that could be in there, and it's so empty. And, I think Bear Claw mentioned this in the chat before, but I do feel like DICE really rushed this. They just threw it out there, say, hey, here's this DLC. We got an agreement with Disney. The movie's coming out. Just take this, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, Bear Claw. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, can you blame them? It's such a cash cow. Like I don't know if you guys have seen, but the Ultimate Edition of the game, I think, even has a little sticker on it that includes Rogue One DLC. They just started releasing that in the fall. Like they're absolutely trying to capitalize on this new movie release.
And what Clowns was just saying there, kind of like segues into the reason we kind of even wanted to bring this up at length in the first place. Yeah, we usually go over the Battlefront DLC. Stassen's a huge, Star Wars fan and always gives us really like in-depth, like good opinions about about these DLCs. But like now that they're all out and we've seen kind of like what the lay of the land is in terms of the 4 releases, do we think that, you guys said it, you're not worried about Battlefront 2, but do you think that DICE as a company is kind of wearing thin in terms of DLC release? Like, Battlefield 1 still has some DLC that has to come out for that. And, after seeing this, I mean, granted that it's separate teams, but at the same time, it seems like, the later DLCs for DICE games are not as good. And is that a problem?
No, I don't think so, to be honest with you. Because I think what happened with Battlefront is that when it first launched, a lot of Star Wars fans were not happy with it. So I think DICE felt kind of ashamed because they thought they did a good job and like it didn't do well publicly with the fans. So I think, they just want to wrap this one up, get it over with, move to Battlefront 2 and make that, fix all the mistakes of 1 and make 2 great. I think that's what they plan on doing.
Well, they even have another team helping. I forget their name, but they have
Are you
helping
talking about with Battlefield
2.
1?
No, Battlefront 2.
Oh, okay. Because I was gonna say, I think a company called Uprise is helping with Battlefield 1.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, and I could be wrong, and you guys feel free to address me, but or correct me, I guess I should say. But I like to think that this premium system that Call of Duty and Battlefield have clutched to for the past several years, I actually think it's becoming a little bit passé, and I think it's becoming less popular. I think that with the resurgence of microtransactions like you're seeing in Halo and Gears of War, and maybe I just say this as somebody who primarily plays Microsoft exclusive games, I like to think that map packs are going away, and developers are finding another way to make money that doesn't split up the player base.
Right.
Well, isn't Ubisoft going into that way where they're doing more microtransactions?
Yep.
And stuff,
The
player base?
Well, and they said that we're looking to support our games for 5 to 10 years now. And anybody who's been playing Rainbow Six Siege, like I think some of us have on and off.
Yeah.
All the maps are free. Characters can be earned with money in the game, or you can pay to upgrade them quicker, and there's cosmetics that you can pay for.
Or how about Halo 5 as well?
Right, and Overwatch. I think it's becoming a thing, and I think that's good for gamers. I'm sure anyone who follows me on Twitter has seen me bitch and moan about Gears of War, because I think they kind of exploit it, but I think that method generally keeps people together more.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to think that maybe DICE will learn, but I mean, I know it's a cliche, but EA and money, that's kind of how they are. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Didn't Doom also do that too with multiplayer?
No, they had a season pass.
Yeah.
But is it for maps?
I thought so.
I thought it
Maps,
was.
demons, I think weapons and ordnance.
I also think that game is relatively dead, multiplayer speaking, but somebody feel free to correct me.
Yeah, I would say it is.
Yeah.
All right, so yeah, that's the Rogue One DLC. I think we'll move on from that. It's only up for season pass people for right now, so you can't go out and buy it for full price.
You wouldn't want to anyway.
Yeah, I'm laughing as I say that. For them.
As we just crap all over it. In case you still want it, it's next week, I think.
Oh my god. Yeah, 2
But
weeks,
honestly,
right? 2 weeks.
Yeah,
maybe
it's
it's 2
after the
weeks.
movie.
And now, any of you guys, because you guys play it more than I do, especially you, Assassin, but I still think that once it's an EA Access and the season pass gets dropped to $30, I still might say it's worth somebody's money. Obviously, play the EA Access version first, and then if you really like it, I don't think $30 is too much for the season pass, considering it's adding 2 really great DLCs and 2 okay DLCs.
The biggest problem, though, Bear Claw, with the season passes on DICE games is that, I mean, once new maps come out, everybody either goes back to the base maps or the newest maps.
Yeah, like the Death Star is a little dead. I know the first DLC is dead.
Yeah, they've got to figure out a way to keep for the next game. They've got and for games in the future in general, because that happens in a lot of games. Like look at Battlefield 4 for God's sakes. Same thing happened with that. They got to figure out a way to keep these older map packs populated, keep them in rotation, spice them up a little bit with a new game mode, or make them, change the layout of them maybe a little bit just to make them a little fresher, something like that.
Or just make all maps free and stop dividing your player base.
Oh, you can do that. Yeah.
Like that's the fastest. I mean, I know that like that's not the best way for them to make money, but the best way to stop breaking your player base is to stop dividing them into 5.
Right. Yep. True. It's true, and I think more companies are moving towards that. Look at the Modern Warfare remaster. All those maps are free. I mean, we've known that for a long time, but I mean, they had a new like kind of trailer thing on Instagram that I checked out this week, or maybe it was yesterday that I saw it on Instagram, and it was like all maps for free. They were like bragging about it, and I was like, Jesus Christ, who are you, and what did you do with Activision? Like, it's just I know it's been a thing, so don't flame me on that, but at the same time, like for a COD game to have free maps, I wonder if they're kind of testing out moving to that model, as greedy as Activision can be sometimes. But yeah, I think people are moving on. People are moving on from the season pass bullshit. Charging us $50 more, and no one plays the first couple of map packs. Come on. All right, let's move on to Final Fantasy, because that came out last week, and we didn't really get a chance to talk about it. I have the game, and I wasn't here last week, so I wanna bring it up and make sure it gets mentioned. And I know Bear Claw, I don't think you have it. Am I the only one who has this actually?
Yep.
Oof.
Wow.
I almost had it.
That doesn't quite count, but
Well, let me just go ahead and give my thoughts on it. I mean, a lot of people have read reviews, you've watched videos, people know what this game is at this point. I just want to, instead of, going over exactly what it is, and people are familiar with Final Fantasy, I want to say the kind of things that I'm really impressed with that has changed from the typical kind of Final Fantasy format. I love the open world aspect of this, even though you can't drive off road, and I know Clown's is going to talk about that in a second. I really like the exploration aspect. I like the farming of materials aspect. I like if you're out at night running around, you're going to be swamped by overpowered beasts and all kinds of different enemy types, and it's not just the same ones. And the action style of fighting is definitely very refreshing and not doesn't feel outdated at all. Like maybe the turn-based style has been getting on Final Fantasy games. Full disclosure, I have it on PlayStation, on an Xbox. So, and I have a PS4 Pro, so I'll get into the graphics aspect in a second. I want these guys to give their impressions about the game in general before we get into the performance. So, anybody wanna go ahead? And maybe I should just let Clowns go, because I know Clowns feels pretty strongly about this one.
Yeah, I mean, I had the game for like 11 days, and I played it, and man, it started off great with the cutscenes, and it looked so good. Then you get to training, which was extremely boring. Like, I thought I was falling asleep. I couldn't tell if it was reality or a dream at that point. Some little animals in the room while you're fighting, Besides that, I mean, you get into the story, you get into the game, and it's like you're hanging out one direction looking for Justin Bieber on a road trip. That's what I feel like. I mean, it's just terrible. The modern day stuff is cool, all right? The open world aspect is kind of neat. But, like, when I walked around, I didn't see, like, so many mobs of enemies to fight. I saw a lot of barren wasteland and dirt that looked like it was on a PS3 engine. It was so terrible for current gen. And then on top of that, the car. Let me talk about this car, okay? Because as you're driving on the road, you see something on the side of the road. You're like, okay, I'm gonna go stop. You try to like pull over. No, the car doesn't really like maneuver well. It's kind of like on rails, and you pass the thing that you're looking at. So you got to turn around. Well, you can't move left to turn around or right to turn around. So you're just like hugging the shoulder a little bit, and you're still going straight. You have to hit the X button to turn around. Who puts the X button for a U-turn? I mean, seriously, that's just bad game mechanics, bad controls. Terrible idea. They should just get rid of the X U-turn.
What I don't understand with the driving, which I can agree with you a little bit about the on-rails thing, is why, if you're auto driving, why even put accelerate and brake? I understand, the pull over thing. like making the driver pull over. But for a majority of the game, you're not going to be doing the driving. It's autopilot. There are a few instances where you definitely do want to go on manual driving. But when you're on rails and it's auto driving, why are there brake and revert? Why are there brake and accelerate buttons? I don't get that at all. But I'm not quite as hung up on the U-turn thing as you clowns say.
Well, let me ask you this: when you first played the game, you first got into the car, and you're first driving somewhere, destination, right? And you look at the mini map, and you can I don't know what they call it, like teleport to the location, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you highlight something on your map. Did you end up at a gas station the first time, or a parking lot somehow, when you're trying to go somewhere?
Yes.
Or did you actually? Yes. See, it's terribly designed. I mean, it doesn't really explain to you that you can highlight this objective, but you're going to go to the closest gas station or parking lot unless you actually pay attention to what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's terrible game mechanics too. Terrible. I don't know. It's just it's bad. I wouldn't pay $60. Maybe $10, $5 in the bin. I'd buy this game.
You're gonna be waiting a long time then.
Redbox, here we go. Come on, Redbox.
Bearclaw or Assassin, about what you've seen about this game. Are you into it or are you not into it? I know Bearclaw, you're not really into JRPGs, but on face value about this thing, you seen anything you like?
Anything I like? I've actually seen some like combat actually looks kind of interesting. But it also looks prohibitively let me put it this way. I've spent a long time playing Western RPGs, and so looking at this, I'm like, oh, this is distinctly not something I've played before. And like Clowns is saying, it's not something I'm putting off forever. But when they talk about we're gonna add DLC that has more story and more cutscenes for free, it makes me think I'm in no rush to pick this up now. Also, I think we talked about this last night on Xbox, but I don't love that the game has sponsored, real world sponsorship in the game. Like, I know Alan Wake did it in the past with Energizer batteries, but Coleman Tents is a bizarre sponsorship deal for a video game.
Oh, you don't want to get a meal and see Coleman plates in front of you in a JRPG, no?
Yeah, it's just a really weird thing for them to do. But no, I don't really want to make any big statements about it either way, just because I haven't played it quite yet. But Assassin, what do you got, man?
I haven't played it. I haven't seen 2 seconds of it.
Oh, you're a hater. You are a Final Fantasy hater, bro.
You saved minutes on your life, my friend, that you'll never get back. So good job. Congratulations.
I'm not saying the game's bad. I'm not saying it's good. Just haven't seen anything.
Two things I want to get to in the YouTube chat that I agree with. Xbot448 says the fighting mechanics are spot on and addicting. 100% agree. There's so much more action now and so much more consistency. The flow is just so much better in this game than you'd get in a turn-based style game. Yeah, the turn-based style, when you pull off that ultra, attack that, you get just straight up 9s all over the screen because it was just a ultimate, devastating blow, as they call it, in those type of games. That's cool, but the rest of the battle, when I'm deciding who to put my potion on or who to attack of the 4 people on the screen, I'm not into that anymore. Honestly, the turn-based thing is over for me. Unless it's Pokemon, the turn-based thing is done. I think now that I've experienced Final Fantasy in this way, I don't want to go back to the old way.
I think the last turn-based game that I played that I really liked was Child of Light from 2014.
A couple years ago. Yep. Yeah, a couple years ago.
And also that game was the one time Ubisoft nailed an indie vibe. But yeah, no. It's just, I know how good games that aren't turn-based are, you know what I mean? It's really fun to, actually do the combat. I can't even do Pokemon anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I know a lot of people that are one thing on Pokemon, but I know, Pokemon's always going to have its audience, whether it's turn-based, whether you need to use a stylus, it doesn't even matter. Whatever it is, it's gonna work. But... Yep.
I mean, and Pokemon, especially at this point, is tapping into what we were talking about earlier with just pure nostalgia, right? Even Pokemon Go, which I think is mostly dead at this point, was tremendously popular, in part because it had an interesting mechanic, but also just because it was appealing to people who are in their mid-20s, early 30s who loved it a decade or two ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that just and maybe that's the appeal of turn-based RPGs now is it's what you played when you were a kid, so maybe that's why we still accept it. I don't know.
Right. The other comment that I wanted to get to was by SageBot in the YouTube chat. He says the chocobo is the way to travel. The car is just for the story, and I do agree with that. I in the chocobo racing and stuff like that. I think that the way they integrated that, it's not just like we have the picture of it on our on the video version right now of the podcast of Noctis on a chocobo, but. It's not superficial at all, the chocobo stuff. It's very much integrated, and I do like that because that's an iconic piece of lore that is Final Fantasy, and I think the way they've integrated that, not only for travel but for other activity, is really good. Is really good. So I do agree with you on that. But I'm the only one who's played it, so I don't want to beat a dead horse here. But hopefully, I'll just quickly say, since I have it on PlayStation. Not that it matters, but I just want to confirm to people that if you've seen reports about PlayStation 4 performance and it being worse on the high 4K mode, it is god awful. In my opinion, for me it's unplayable. I can't stand improper frame pacing. It looks to the common person as bad frame rate, but it's not. It's still at 30, but you can just tell there's a little bit of skip every once in a while, and I have a really nice 4K TV, and it's devastating to me that the 4K high does not perform nearly as well as the 4K light. But it does, 4K looks good. It looks good, but I'm not
kind of the trend of the Pro at the moment. Not to get off topic.
No, it is, and I just I saw a bunch of stuff about the games that are getting the updates to bring it to 4K. The Witness looks great, performs great in 4K. It just as advertised, but like Call of Duty Black Ops 3. God, watch the videos on that and how that performs. Jesus, 30 frames per second drops down to very regularly in high combat areas. And that is not Call of Duty. Like, I'm sorry.
You have to imagine, and this is pure speculation, totally baseless, so disregard it if you want. But you have to imagine there's a degree of pressure from the from Sony to say, hey, we've got this out, especially with like title like Call of Duty, where they've got this tight knit partnership now, where they're like, we've got this new console, we'd love for you to have this ready. Oh, and by the way, it's coming out in November, and they were just. You know what I mean? Like, there's no reason to not have an optimized game. I mean, I guess we're looking at, Last Guardian, which is having the same issues, and it's a first-party game. But, like, it just astounds me, and it frankly makes me nervous for the Scorpio's launch. Is that going to become the new norm when we have two versions of Xbox and two versions of PlayStation? Are we going to see these somewhat inconsistent performance on multi-platform games?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely something to worry about, and hopefully now that the Scorpio is coming out a year later, so in theory developers will have known about it for longer than the Pro. I'm not one of the people that believes that the Pro was the in the plans from the get-go. I know there are people that do say that they firmly believe, and they have some evidence, they firmly believe that the Pro was the plan right from 2013, that they were going to release that 3 years later. I'm not a believer of that. So I think the devs probably didn't really have it as long as they really could have to optimize stuff, and hopefully with the Scorpio it's going to be a different story since it's coming a year later, and Microsoft maybe transparent. Who knows? Yeah. But we'll find out. All right, let's get into this week's two big releases. One for PlayStation, one for Xbox. One has been in the pipeline for a decade, and one I'm kind of surprised has come out so soon. First, we'll get to Dead Rising because I think we all have some pretty good thoughts about the Dead Rising stuff, and then we'll get to Last Guardian because fewer of us have played it. So, Dead Rising 4 came out this week on Xbox and Windows 10. It is not a Play Anywhere title, so don't think you're gonna buy the digital copy and get it on both. I don't think Bearclaw has it, but he has some educated opinions on it. But we all have it, so I want to let the people who have played it the most here, go first. So, Assassin or Clowns, you want to give your initial impressions of Dead Rising?
Let's go ahead.
I'm gonna say I love Dead Rising 4. I think the game is a lot of fun. I haven't really gotten into the single player story, which I probably should get into more. But the multiplayer Assassin, I have been playing the co-op. I want to say like the past 2 or 3 days now,
Yep.
and we're already like level 56, 58 between that range, and I'm just in love with the game. I like the mini missions, even though they're repetitive. They're just the way they do it is perfect, and the mob of zombies in co-op is awesome. Um, Killing them is a lot of fun, and there's nothing bad I can really say about it. I mean, it does have some lag issues here and there, but it doesn't take away from the fun of the game. I think it's a lot of fun, man. I
Mm-hmm.
would if I was to rate this game right now, standing on just the co-op, I would put it at 9 out of 10. I'm not much of a fan of it.
Assassin, you want to add to that or agree with that at all?
Alright, I'm gonna go with the good stuff first. So far I like the story. I've been playing it. Trying to find things is, fun, whatever, safe places, combo stuff like blueprints. And then is a lot of fun to get. I love all the zombies. There's more zombies in areas than in co-op, so you can get bigger combos and destroy a lot of things. Then you get to the co-op. My console has crashed. My console
Yep.
has froze. My console or the game has crashed. The game, when I'm looking at other people, they're teleporting all over the place. Zombies teleport to the people that are trying to hit them, and they're dying. They teleport. The boss teleports. What?
But we got to put a disclaimer on that, Assassin, because although, like I said, there is lag issues, Inferno and I haven't had the same amount of issues that you've had just in like 1 hour.
Which I don't understand because my Xbox is hardwired and with 60 megabytes per second internet.
I mean, that should be fast enough. I mean, granted, me and clowns have faster internet than you.
Well, yeah, but
Not trying to rub it in, but
like double.
we are. Um, yeah, I got like 240 now, so. Um, but
That boss internet, damn.
yeah, hell yeah. But I mean, I'm gonna have to when it comes to the glitchiness stuff. I agree with both of you. I think on this. I mean, what Assassin says about the teleporting is definitely for me the biggest issue on the multiplayer. The multiplayer is fun as hell. It is fast paced. It is not. It is not. It's timed, but it's not like, oh my god, I gotta get done. I gotta get done. I gotta get done. You can still pass. It's not like Dead Risings in the past where you're really watching the clock and it's really making you have a little bit of anxiety about getting the game done. But with the multiplayer, as long as you get to that save zone at the end and you can fail some of the objectives, totally all right. It's not like you have to keep looking at the clock, make sure you beat the clock or anything. But the inconsistencies in the performance are really a drag. Hopefully, they really iron that out pretty soon because the teleporting zombies thing is just inexcusable, in my opinion. Because you can be running and it can be clear in front of you, and then all of a sudden you'll run straight into a zombie for no reason, and you're just like, where the hell did that zombie come from? And the fact of the matter is, he just like teleported from somewhere and it just populated him there. Or like, I'm running behind Assassin. I'm like, all right, lead the way, bud, to the next objective because he knows he's been playing a lot more than me, and he knows the mall pretty well. And he's running, and all of a sudden, like light speed, like 200 feet ahead of where he was, and then like he'll slow down a little bit, and then light speed again, like up the escalator. I'm like, where the hell did you just go?
See, though, that's where I got to put that disclaimer in because Inferno, when I played with you and Assassin, you didn't teleport all over the place like that.
Yeah,
it was just only Assassin teleporting. The one thing I will agree with Assassin on is when trying to revive people, that little bit of lag there definitely affects that because you're sitting there holding B and it's like nothing's happening.
Yep. Yeah, no, and when you're facing some of the boss battles, I mean, granted, a lot of people have been saying Dead Rising is easy, and I agree with them compared to the old games, just because of how the health works and the weapon switching, and and there's no difficulty really adjustment option. You really just play on one difficulty. But you get to that boss, man, and I'll tell you, if one of your teammates drops, it could be game over. Some of the bosses are only weak to very specific kinds of weapons. You'll be hitting them with the regular blunt objects, bats, combo blunt weapons, and nothing will happen. So you really need your whole team there. Teams of 2. If one goes down, obviously you're done. Team of 3, one goes down, you better get over and revive them. And when the mechanic doesn't work like it should, it could make your last 20 minutes on that episode a waste. You'll have to just start over. So yeah, hopefully they get that stuff ironed out. I think they can.
Well, there was a few more things I experienced. I got stuck in behind doors when I could clearly get through the door.
Mm-hmm.
I got stuck in benches.
Mm-hmm.
I've got stuck on just in the middle of the floor.
Mm-hmm.
My weapons, my whole inventory got wiped.
Looks like
Just
we're
in the middle of the fight, and hitting zombie and where's my weapons?
Looks like we're flipping the script here, Assassin. I remember on Dead Rising 3, I couldn't do anything. We couldn't even play for more than like 2 hours together before I fell through the floor. And now on Dead Rising 4, I'm having a perfect experience, loving the game, and you can't even get through a couple episodes without crashing out or losing your weapons all over the place. So Bear Claw, I know you don't have it, but I want to let you chime in on this. Are you interested in getting it?
Rubbing it in. Yeah, I am. So I think I've talked about this a little bit. Still waiting on a press thing before I go ahead and pull the trigger myself on it. Just see if I'm going to review it. But I'm interested in it. Dead Rising 2, I think I'm in the minority when I say this, stressed the hell out of me. I didn't enjoy the timer. As a mechanic, it stressed me out. I love it, and frankly, people bitch about this with Dead Rising 4, but I love that things don't have a strict timer anymore. That makes the game much better to me.
Yep.
But I do think there are some, and this is sort of what we talked about earlier in the show for people who might have just joined now. But Capcom, this is an example of Capcom, again, taking a series that's relatively popular and willing to change things whether core fans want it or not. Okay. Right? Like they changed the voice of Frank West. Undoubtedly the most iconic character in the series. They changed some core mechanics. They no longer have psychopaths. They're replaced with maniacs, I think is what they're calling them in this one. The No Cop campaign, which was only introduced in the last game. There are some interesting differences here. But everything I can gather from the game from looking at it is that it's at odds with its competitor this week, being The Last Guardian, and that Last Guardian is a challenging, thought-provoking puzzle game, and this is your Michael Bay kind of like or intentionally B movie. This is your Sci-Fi Channel humor, and I love that. I love that you're not playing an intellectually challenging game. It is fucking summer blockbuster video games.
Yes,
and I think that's a cool thing. I think that. We don't get enough of that, and I think another thing which maybe won't make the game sell very well in the summertime, but I love the holiday theme. I think that's undoubtedly the most interesting part of the game that gives it the most personality.
Even in the pause menu, there's Christmas music.
Yeah,
so
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool. The integration's great, and maybe they're just hedging their bets on getting the holiday sales, and maybe they have some other kind of Dead Rising thing up their sleeve, Huh?
Sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I apologize.
No, it's okay.
Well, I was gonna say, and they're gonna double dip because next year when it comes to PlayStation, they're gonna hit that same December market.
That's right.
And it'll probably work then too. Just like a little bit more so than Tomb Raider. But yeah, I think that Capcom, as of late, is willing to take those bets against their core audience, and maybe it'll pay off, maybe it won't.
Mm-hmm.
Well, but no.
Bear Claw, correct me if I'm wrong though, but didn't a lot of fans hate the way the timer was in Part 3? Dead Rising 3?
I don't actually remember. I actually played through and beat Dead Rising 3, but I don't remember the timer in that game.
I don't think the timer was quite as obvious as it had been in prior installations.
Yeah, because what stressed me out in Dead Rising 2 was you had to get the vaccine for your daughter, and that's what really made... Because, part of the game is a murder sandbox, and it's not a sandbox if there's a timer on it.
Yes. Yep.
So yeah, I don't know. I'm very interested in it. Everything I've heard about it is it's funny. No, it's on my list. We'll see what happens around Christmas time, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. And don't forget, every game is dropped to like 40 or below. Even
Yeah.
did you see Watch Dogs today? It was $38.99 on
Yep.
Newegg already.
It's another one I'm waiting on.
Damn, man. Yeah, you're gonna be able to get those for cheap.
Not a great year to be a day one adopter.
Not at all. Probably not a good one. Probably not a good time to be a day one adopter from now on in the gaming industry.
Or a publisher, because I'm sure they're not happy about their game being $38 less than a month from launch.
They need to do compelling stuff like the Forzas and the
Touche.
Gears of the world.
Touche.
The early access stuff, because they made up that edition was 100. They probably made up the difference that they lost from day one adopters waiting on the other version. So
yeah.
And Last Guardian, that came out. It's been a decade. They showed. I mean, we've seen PS3 footage of this game back in 2009. There was PS3 footage of this game, and I've got to say, it looks very similar. It looks very similar.
Of course.
It does not strike me as 6 or 7 years more of work on a game. Or sorry, I shouldn't say 6 or 7. I should say 5 or 6 more years of work on a game. Albeit, iconic, albeit very, lore heavy for the people who really love the series, love Last Guardian, love Shadow of the Colossus, love Ico. It's one of those games where I think if you're not into it, you're probably not going to try it and really love it unless you have a reason to be compelled to, from what I've gathered. Granted, I don't have the game. I'm very interested in the game. I want more exclusives for my PlayStation, so I'm very interested, and I've watched probably 6 to 7 hours of stream time on this just to see if it's going to be my kind of thing. And it's really not, from what I've gathered. I don't know what you guys think about it.
So I think the first thing that's worth addressing is that when you talk about how it looks, first of all, absolutely fair criticism, but think about when the Xbox One and PS4 first came out. When we were having these cross-platform releases, there was improvement, especially frame rate wise. There was definitely some improvement, but visually, there's not a huge difference between a lot of launch games. I think the most obvious and probably the most obscure is Thief, which just bombed terribly.
Yeah.
But Thief looked almost identical between next gen and last gen, and it's just because they spent so much time in the cooker making Thief as a reboot that by time next gen came around, they weren't going to start from scratch, so they had to just keep the same engine going. That being said, I think Trico, the bird cat dog thing, the feathers are really great. I think that looks from a physics perspective, I think it's gorgeous. But sort of what we were talking about earlier, I've heard performance on the PS4 Pro is not great.
Not good.
And another thing, I'm not sure how much Cons and Assassin have kind of researched this game, but one of the things I was reading about is that they intentionally designed Trico to ignore player-controlled calls to the animal because they want him to behave like a real-world cat. So if you press the button for him to come here, he'll sometimes ignore that. And I think that's funny, but that sucks as a video game, right?
Yeah.
Imagine if you were playing a BioWare game and you commanded, or any game where you command your companions, and they just ignored you sometimes because that's how real-world people are. It's interesting, but it's not better gameplay.
Right.
Yeah,
I think the biggest knock against this, from kind of what I've gathered from frustration from pretty big streamers, is the control and the camera inconsistencies, and that also includes what you just mentioned about the command of your companion. I mean, that's all kind of wrapped in, and I think people who are streaming it and enjoying it for what it is are kind of not too pissed off about the performance.
Mm-hmm.
For me, performance, if it's already at 30 FPS and it drops down regularly, into the low 20s, I'm gonna be pissed about that. I'm sorry. But there's some people who just let that go. But I mean, you hear these people that say, okay, resolution doesn't matter. Very often in games, looks don't matter. It's how it plays. And this is a game that sometimes doesn't perform well. Very often, actually, doesn't perform well, and very often doesn't control well.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, sorry, I just saw a comment. I want to address it. Somebody says, I heard it runs better on the Pro. You're not totally wrong, but here's what's kind of fucked up about it. If you run it at 4K, which is kind of the selling point of the Pro, it runs about the same as the vanilla PS4. Better resolution, but similar frame rate issues. The only way to get a locked 30 frames per second is if you drop The Last Guardian's resolution to 1080p. So you're going to, like, what should be the benchmark of the standard Xbox One, the standard PS4, which is 1080p 30 frames per second, and it's on a $400 piece of hardware. Like, that's
right,
not
that you may have spent money to upgrade from your vanilla PS4.
Right, to get a very regular PS4 experience out of it.
Right.
Yeah, I like, as somebody who only has a vanilla PS4, when I hear it has frame rate problems, like, I'm not stoked. Again, these things can be fixed in patch, but when a game spends 9 years in development, I'm not sure a patch 3 months in might fix frame rate issues. It might be kind of baked in at this point.
Right. And maybe there isn't as much hope as we'd want for this game to be fixed, especially since it's very interesting to me that PlayStation hasn't really advertised this game as much as they've advertised some of this stuff coming in 2019. Last Guardian kind of lost steam towards in the past couple of weeks, past couple of months even. The advertisement of Last Guardian is not nearly what the advertisement of some of the Xbox titles have been for this winter, or even some of the PlayStation 4 multiplats have been, like Destiny and stuff like that they know their bread is buttered on. But the Last Guardian has kind of lost its steam, and then it got a lot of steam because it's come out and it's finally here for all these people that have waited and thought it was vaporware, and now this is kind of the thing we've gotten. It's just,
I guarantee you it won't sell that well.
oh,
I mean, like,
no.
again, like, there's a lot of hype, but like Metal Gear Solid, for all, like, I mean, there's a lot of hindsight here, right? But when Metal Gear Solid came out 15 months ago, everyone talked about it like it was the shit, right? Because it's Hideo Kojima, right? It's a big deal. But it was the 20th best-selling game of 2015, and it sold on 3 different platforms.
Right.
That's insane. And The Last Guardian's been in the cooker for a decade, and so it's had time to build a fan base. But even when you're selling to just 40 million people, they're gonna be lucky if they sell 2, 3, 4 million copies of it. And I don't necessarily think 10% adoption rate is incredible for a for a first party game that's been in development and had as much hype as this game has.
Yeah, for a first party game that's had as much hype, like you said, has been in development for as long as you said, and is one of single digit AAA titles on the system that are essentially first party, like,
right. Well, and one of the things that, and I guess this is probably pretty niche what I'm about to get into, but one of the things I've been studying is how games are marketed, right? And so one of the things that I've learned is games, when they make a cover art for a game, they're actually not appealing to people who follow the game. They're appealing to, like, people who have never heard of it but who play video games. Ken Levine famously said that when he designed BioShock Infinite's cover art, they were thinking about how to sell the frat boys who had never heard of it because they just want it to look generic. And so when The Last Guardian has a cover art of a little boy in a robe and a cat, bird, dog, you're just not going to appeal to that core demographic. And, like, while I think it's interesting, I'm not sure that some 25-year-old frat boy is going to. And
No.
that's okay, but
here's what I think. Whenever I look at Last Guardian, right, I think of Avatar, The Last Airbender, for the main character, and then for the guardian creature, I think of Never Ending Story. Put them together, and you got...
That's actually pretty damn good. Nice analogy. Okay, go ahead. What were you saying?
I think Avatar, I think the Avatar looking character will appeal to, like, the 25-year-old college kids because they probably, grew up watching Nickelodeon and that boring cartoon.
Potentially.
So I think it's gonna appeal. Do I think it's gonna sell well? Not after all these complaints of the mechanics and all that. No, the camera, like Inferno mentioned, but I think it's gonna sell to its base, its goal objective.
I also think, and I'm like the last guy to ever call console bias because I think a lot of that is overblown. But I will think it's a little funny that I think it was Eurogamer. I hope I'm right. I'm not throwing the wrong person under the bus. They published an article, and their caption on Twitter was something like, "Don't let frame rate issues hold you back from enjoying The Last Guardian." And it's like, would you say that about any other game?
Right.
Like imagine if Call of Duty had horrible frame rate.
Yeah,
right.
No.
Like
be buried. It'd be absolutely buried.
It's just bizarre that like this game, and again, narrative games matter to me. I care about narrative more than performance. But let's be honest, single digits on a vanilla PS4 at times is inexcusable.
Awful. And if you think about it, if you had a Call of Duty game and it drops down to 40